it's Renee with Delaney Jane Cards. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have an unboxing and a card process video for you for the November Flavor of the Month card kit called A Vintage Christmas. And this is the first collection here. It's called Holly Berries. It has Holly Berries paper by Scrapping for Less, a Victorian Christmas stamp set, green fiber vines by Decora, red crochet thread, and buttons. This is Collection 2, A Vintage Christmas. It has a Vintage Christmas paper by Scrapping for Less, Christmas post stamp by LDRS, blackboard labels by Trimcast, wood icons by Kaisercraft, enamel dots by Doodlebug. This is Collection 3, Santa. It has Scrapping for Less, Santa paper by Scrapping for Less, Jolly Santa stamp by Your Next Stamp, decoupage paper by Craft Consortium, ephemera by Ruby Rocket, enamel dots by Gina Marie Designs, and this is Collection 4 called An Ornamental Christmas, an ornamental Christmas paper by Scrapping for Less, ornamental Christmas stamp set by Scrapping for Less, Frosty Ornaments Gold Stickers by Find It Trading, Strand of Pearl Trimmings, Sequins by Scrapping for Less, and then there's the cardstock. There's Black Licorice Craft, Whipped Cream, Insulation Pink, Grout Gray, and then either Sour Apple, Limeade, or Jelly Bean Green. There are 4 envelopes, 3 white, 1 craft, and then I just showed you the Banana Split, which was a Noel Ornament Christmas Bell and Sayings stamp set, Tim Holtz Distress Crayon, and watercolor paper. So I am going to jump right into the cards here. This is card number 1. It's made with the Frosty Ornaments Gold Stickers by Find It Trading from Collection 4. I stuck those down to a piece of dark green cardstock here, and then I used my Prismacolor pencils to color in each of the little sections. Now, my part of the sticker sheet had trees. I'm not sure what the other shapes or designs are, but everybody's going to be different. One thing I like about Scrapping for Less is it's kind of a sample of all sorts of different things that are on the market that you might not normally pick. So I had 2 trees that were identical and one that's kind of got this really frilly tree pattern in the center. So I colored the 2 trees that are identical, and then I colored the other tree in shades of green. I really do like how colored pencil looks on dark colored cardstocks. I like how colored pencils look on all colored cardstocks, but on dark colored cardstocks, they are particularly beautiful, in my opinion. And this gave me the look of like gold embossing without gold embossing. I just stuck a sticker down. So in this video, you'll see that I kind of picked and chose parts that were particularly important for each card that I really wanted to highlight. A video this long is not something I normally do. But I thought it might be fun. There is also a shorter version of this on my channel, which is just each of the collections plus a little snapshot of each of the cards. So I trimmed out those trees and then I heat embossed the sentiment and die cut it onto a strip of the same dark green cardstock that I used. Layered some pattern papers here on this gold glitter cardstock in the back. That's from a previous kit. I think it's by Darice and it sheds a little bit, so kind of want to get it out of my stash. Glitter in my house, it gets everywhere. I think it does that everywhere, but I don't really want it on my kids. So this was my first card here, just very simple, and I used my glossy accents to highlight the flowers in the center of these trees. Did that on both. That is card 1. In card 2, I stamped this beautiful ornament. This is from the Scrapping for Less stamp set. When I see this ornament, I think of the ornaments like on my grandma's tree when I was little, and they were silver and gorgeous and like glass, not the plastic ones, like the real glass bauble ornaments. And she took such great care in packing them away and making sure that they didn't get damaged each year. And that is what I seen when I seen this. Now this is from the ornamental Christmas stamp set is what the stamp set is called. And that is by Scrapping for Less. And they're getting better and better at these kind of stamp sets and stuff that they're making. I'm not sure who's actually designing them, but they're doing a great job. So I colored this with my gray markers. I wanted it to look silver. I really wanted it to be reminiscent of my grandma's ornaments. And I've seen a couple other designers color this, and they did it in color, in greens and golds and reds, and they're gorgeous. But when I seen the stamp, this is what I could envision. So after I colored it, I fussy cut it out with a little border. Nothing particularly special. It's round. It was really easy. And then I picked some pattern papers. I die cut, well, no, I just cut pattern papers and I layered them here. Used some dark green to back my pattern paper. And those pattern papers are from the kit. And then I popped this ornament up with some foam tape. And it needed a sentiment. And while I was deciding, I put some white gel pen details on this ornament here. I just hadn't decided. And then I pulled out the extra stamp set that comes in the banana split, and I used a saying from there. I don't have any other stamps in my collection that say good tidings. I thought that was kind of neat. So I did pop that up on my panel here, and I kept this in because I wanted to show I used a little bit of cardstock there to even out the layer so that it didn't dip down for shipping and stuff. Then I just added a single sequin to add a little shine to that ornament. I stamped, colored, and cut out another ornament exactly the same for card number 3. And I had these other ornaments off on the top of my desk because I used them in another card, and I thought that they would go really nice here. So, but I needed a sentiment, and I thought, well, it would be really cool if a sentiment could be inside another ornament. So I used this Gina K Designs masking paper, and I masked off the center of the ornament and stamped out the outside and peeled that off, and then I put the outside of the paper back on and then stamped the sentiment. I did it in a Copic Safe ink, which is my ink on 3 blackout ink, and then I colored the ornament. But I left all of my stamps in the MISTI because I wasn't done stamping this. But I wanted to color it and not worry about having to work around anything. So I stamped that out. That would be gorgeous in a card just like that. But I wanted the sentiment to be heat embossed, so I re-stamped it and heat embossed it in silver. And then I fussy cut that out the same as I did the other ornament, and added my gel pen detail here and layered everything together, placed everything where I wanted it to be. I really wanted this to look like you're looking in one of those silver tinsel trees. I added a little bit of string to each one of those ornaments so that they were hanging, and then layered them on some pattern paper. I did use these flat back, they're like gems. They're from the Dollar Tree of all places. They're just clear. They have they're faceted. I'm sure you could get them somewhere else. I've had those a while. That container's actually almost empty. They're just not thick, so I like them for card making. I added a little bit of shimmer on top of these ornaments and then moved on to the next card. This card is made with the Santa collection. That's collection 3. And I use this Santa in a couple of different ways. The first way I used Santa here was to Copic color him. So I did stamp him in my ink on 3 blackout ink, which is my current favorite Copic friendly ink. And then I was picking a background paper. I used this Merry Christmas paper. I used it for my sentiment. I actually didn't put a sentiment on this card, and that's normally not something I do, but it had Merry Christmas all over it. I thought that was fine. And I did leave all of the, oh, I left a Cooper in there too. I did leave all of the Copic coloring in because there's one thing in particular that I wanted to make sure I showed. I had a little bit of a problem with my Copics, and I wanted to show how I fixed that, because if you've been coloring a while or brand new to coloring, especially with alcohol markers, sometimes they're like an animal of their own. And sometimes you can get really discouraged if you're really far along and something happens. And I'll tell you how I could have avoided that. Well, first you see me air that out a little bit. I used my Copic colorless blender there, and I wanted to make sure it dried. Here is where I kind of made a mistake. I got my reds out. I wanted this to be red, but I got my reds out and I used them now. I would recommend waiting until the end to use your reds. And here, this is what I wanted to show. I got a dot of red on my paper, and I used my colorless blender, and I could have just did that, but I really wanted that red gone because I wanted his beard to be white. So what I did is I used another piece of paper, and I kind of pushed the color through the white paper I was coloring on onto the other piece of paper. The red is gone. If you just use your colorless blender and kind of try to scribble it out, what it does is just disperse the color. It gets lighter because it's more of the like lightener that is in the Copic marker. It doesn't actually erase the color, or it doesn't erase it at all. So you kind of have to push it around. And by giving it another place to go, by using that other piece of paper, I was able to push that color right out of Santa's beard and onto that other piece of paper. And here I used my warm grays for his beard and all of his hair, because he is a person. Well, he's a magical being, but he's a person. So I wanted to use the warm grays here for his beard. But his beard and the fuzzy part of his hat are white, and I didn't want them to be the same white. So after I was done with the warm grays, I used the cool grays for the white of his hat, or his hat. And I started with a really dark gray. And I went along the edges, and then I stippled out. Stippling is just little tiny dots. And when you stipple, you want the dots to be closer together where you want it to be darkest. And then there's more space between them where you want it lighter. Well, I used that concept and the idea of other colors. And then here for the holly berries, I used the same reds. I just didn't go all the way to the darkest red so that it had a different shade. And then I couldn't decide on what color I wanted for his mouth. You didn't need 4 or 5 colors there. I really should have just settled on the darkest one. It just took me a while to decide. For the holly leaves, I used this green combination, and when I first put it out, it seemed really too light and bright. So I went back through and darkened everything up. And then I did add a little bit of blue to his eyes. And then I wanted to, I fussy cut him, and then I wanted to color the outside so it wasn't white. I really wanted his beard to appear white. And by having that white edge, it didn't. It appeared more gray. But as soon as you add that little bit of a border, his beard definitely looks white. So here I just layered my papers up. I used that decoupage sheet, which is like tissue paper, so I only glued it where I knew it was going to be covering. And then I added a piece of the ephemera and some of these gems by Gina Marie Designs. I do like these gems like that. They're not thick. They're like easily mailed. Then I added some white gel pen details and a little bit of glossy accents to the holly berries and to his eyes, because Santa should have really beautiful eyes. For the next card, I used the same Santa stamp set, and I wanted to make one of those wood signs. You know, they're really popular in my area where everybody goes to the paint night kind of things. That's what I was thinking when I made this. So I paper pieced Santa using all the different pieces of paper for the different parts of him. Because these papers are like all based on wood, which they all have like a wood grain, or you can see it peeking through the pattern. I thought that was a really cool way to use these papers for this. I could see these papers used in so many different ways. They're gorgeous. And I'm pretty sure Scrapping for Less will have the full paper pad available in their shop. Um, After I stamped them on all of the different patterns, I also stamped him on a piece of white cardstock too, just so I had a place to build everything, because I am going to fussy cut Santa out. Um, when I cut out his face, I paper pieced him so that the face was on the face of that other pattern paper. I just made sure I oriented it so that you didn't see like the eyeball or anything. It was just the coloring. Um, I did use my Copic marker when I went around that piece of paper, because I wanted to make sure that the Copic marker kind of did bleed into the paper. For everything else, I used a water-based marker around the edges. When you fussy cut things that are so tight together like this, sometimes you don't get such a perfect cut. So having the extra black there was fine. I had a black line, and I wanted to make sure that if there was anything that wasn't cut right, that it just looked like the line. So there I did the Copic marker versus the water-based marker trick. So here I'm just picking and choosing the different parts of Santa that I still need to cut out in different pattern papers to accommodate those pieces. I did use the same pattern for the top of the hat, the little fuzzy, what would be white, and the fuzzy ball. I used the same pattern for that because I didn't want two different patterns. I thought that would look really weird because they're the same. So I trimmed those out, and they were all really simple shapes. So if you decide to paper piece Santa, this one's a really good one for it. The only thing that is a little fussy is the holly berries. And what I did is just trimmed them out separately. The hat, I could have cut it into several pieces there, but I just trimmed it out, and then I laid the holly berries on top. I added a little bit of white gel pen detail, and I just layered that onto a panel of cardstock, so I didn't show that part. And then this is the next set of cards here. This is with the what stamp set is this? This is the Sunny Studio one. It's called the Victorian Christmas stamp. I looked up Victorian houses, and now I want a Victorian house. They're so pretty. They have all this beautiful woodwork. Sometimes they're done in white, and sometimes they're done in brown. On all the houses that I colored today, I chose to do all the woodwork brown. But I did use some really beautiful house colors. This house in particular is done in brown, not brown, it's done in purples, but a really deep blue violet color that is almost gray. It's something that I think a homeowners association would approve of if I went in and said, I want to paint my Victorian house purple. It's almost like a bluey grayish purple. It's very gorgeous. It's a color that I think I probably should use more often. And then I picked my E40 family. I used that for like a cream color for the part of the house that would stand out. And then I did all the wood trim. And this, just like a real Victorian house, has tons of trim. Whoever designed this, they did a lot of line work, because, oh my gosh, there are so many tiny little tight spaces. That is a like spindle porch on there. Like it's got the spindle rails. Those are some tiny little lines. Oh my goodness. And then there is a wreath on the door, so I did color that. I left this one in because, well, first of all, I like watching coloring. So if there's any coloring, I'm probably going to leave it in unless it's identical. But I left this one in because when it came to finishing this little scene on this card, I didn't really put in a whole scene, but your eye kind of fills that in with what I did. So I trimmed this out with a square. I think it's a cross-stitched square. I don't know. And I have gone to really using just double or removable Scotch tape. Here's what I'm talking about. I used my BG70, BG72 to lay in some color right there where the sky would meet the snow. and it doesn't go up very far. And then I also made sure I made it dark, like on the edge. And I used a little bit of glitter paper here for the snow bank, but that's not really what I wanted to show. But by putting that little bit of color where the snow and the sky meet, it looks like a whole scene. And it was just a little bit of coloring. I left most of this in here because the thread that you get, it's not heat safe. uh, I heat embossed by it, and I had to be really careful because I did start to scorch it. In the end, it does look fine. It doesn't look scorched. If you didn't watch this video, you wouldn't know. But if you are going to heat emboss on your card and you're going to have that crochet thread near it, heat emboss first. Don't do like I do. Don't do that dumb thing. I always do something dumb, and this was particularly dumb. But I threaded this through the button. It is thin enough that you can thread it through any of those buttons there. And then I just looped it around the back and did some heat embossing. Now I could have and should have. At this point, I knew I was going to heat emboss. I should have peeled that thread up and done my heat embossing. But I didn't, and then I really, you could see where it started to scorch, and then I like rolled it around, made it look better. Don't do that. That was dumb. But I did add a little bit of gold on both the top and the bottom with a peel off there. There's gold in the star pattern that I used there, so, and the like brass doorknob on the house, so it does all tie together. I used a little bit of glossy accents on the windows, and that finished that card. For my next card, I used the same stamp, but I masked it. And then I used this sheet from Simon Says Stamp here. I've had that one a while. I think they might have had a bad batch when I got them because my stamps stuck to it at one time and took the grid off. But I was more so using it to make sure I didn't have to clean my stamp because I'm lazy. I clearly didn't line everything up perfect, but I'll take care of that in a little bit. So I left this coloring in because, like I said before, I really like coloring, but I also was doing something a little bit different here with the masking of the image. You don't have to have a big image to carry a card. You can repeat it, and this kind of looked like one of those rows of houses. I'm thinking like Full House, you know, I know that they brought it back, but the original Full House, when you see the line of houses lined up in San Francisco, I think that's where they are. And that's kind of what I was thinking when I looked at these houses here. And I did do the center house with a darker brown color, just so that they weren't all exactly the same. And I didn't do the really pretty colored on the outside like I did with the purple house on the last card. This one I did the houses in brown, and then I added my color to the center part. So this one here I did in blues, and there's a lot of details on this stamp. It's just really beautiful. It's a tiny little stamp set. It's just one stamp and I think a sentiment or 2 sentiments that go together and some snowflakes. You'll see those in a little bit, but it doesn't have much going on, but you can definitely do a lot with it. You could just heat emboss this house on some dark cardstock and leave it just like that. It would be really beautiful. I could also see it done as colored pencil on craft with some white falling snow. That would be really, really pretty. But I really like how I did this with the row of 3. So like I said, I did a blue, and now I'm doing a more golden yellow for this one. I did look up these Victorian homes, and I did really pick colors that I found when I Googled them. You remember when Googled was not a word that we used? It was, you know, you just look stuff up in the dictionary or in the encyclopedia. Sometimes you did research at the actual library, not on your phone with Google. So here I brought that purple combination back for this end house here. I really, really liked it, and I wanted to show it off again because it was gorgeous. I think I did go a little bit deeper more purple with this one, but it's definitely a purple. So we have blue, yellow, and purple, but kind of Victorian colors. They're more earthy, I guess, than just bright blue and bright purple and bright yellow. I did really simple brown for all of the wood trim. They're super tiny areas. There is no way I was going to sit here and shade them. Now, if I was using colored pencils with a super fine tip, and I might have tried it, but I don't know. And I did not find out. You could find out. Tell me how it looks. Did you do it? Come back and find this video and tell me that you used colored pencils on this stamp, and I want to know how it turned out. But I used my markers because that was a lot of coloring. This is a really more simple card for me. I think I would define my style as uncluttered. I wouldn't say it's clean and simple. I wouldn't say it's layered. It's definitely not busy. So I would say it's uncluttered. I don't know if that's a style, but I'm going to decide that's my style. So I did do a lighter brown on the panels of those doors so that it didn't just all blend in. And then I did the wreaths in green, of course, and I did the swags on the front porch in red, but in a really light red color. The R22 here is my lightest. R24, and I'm not sure, but I think I did bring in a third color because, you know, I'm a crazy person. And then I used my BG 70 and 72 for the snow. I just really liked that combination for this. I also put the BG 70 and 72 in the corners of the windows, just makes them look frosty. And then I did all of the lights in rainbow order, but because I didn't want them to all line up perfectly, I started the rainbow in a different place on each one. But I just dotted the marker on those lights. There's no way you could add any more to that. So here I stamped the sentiment on the bottom. It says Season's Greetings. I used gold for that, and then I embossed these snowflakes, sort of randomly, sort of not, over the top. I used my white embossing powder. I wanted it to look like snow. I didn't want to really fill it in. I just wanted to add some fun. And there's a single snowflake and a double snowflake in this little stamp set. So it was kind of cool to just move them around and, you know, flip it around and get some snow over top. I just stuck that down to a piece of pattern paper after I die cut it out with a Gina Marie die, added some glossy accents to the windows, and a little bit of brass to the doorknob, and some shimmer to the snow. And that was the end of that card. It was, I would say, simple, but it was a lot of coloring. But otherwise, it looks simple. The touch that I thought was really cool was the snowflakes over top. And then because I didn't have this lined up very, very well, I did use some stickles to go over the snow on the bottom particularly. And then I just kind of ran it over everything else so that it all matched. But it kind of blended in that bottom edge. So my houses look like they were lined up properly. So for this next card here, I pulled the joy out of the banana split stamp set, and I used one of these wood pieces that came in the kit, and I tapped it on this ink pad. I wanted it to be this color, and then I was going to tap that onto my Versamark ink pad. Instead, I just got the refill out, put a couple dots on that tree, and then spread it around. And I used the ultra thick embossing powder by Ranger, and I put that over top. That is some really cool stuff, and it is in a giant bottle, and I need to play with it more. It's been hanging around my craft room for a while, and I need to use it. So here I stamped this on this craft cardstock, and then I wanted to make sure I could emboss it, so I just used that little paintbrush because it still had Versamark ink on it, and painted the stamp, and then used the clear embossing powder to emboss it so it was shiny. And that was that card. So on to the next two cards. I did them at the same time. These are done with the banana split stamp set. And the next 3 cards are all watercolor. These two I did at the same time, and I used this uh, Peerless watercolor set. And this is why you see my green fingers, because I had cut this piece of green out before I started to add it to my kind of ready-made palette that I had. So one of these is going to be more traditional watercolor. The other is going to be very messy, but controlled. I didn't just splatter the color on, which would be kind of cool, I guess. I did use a much more controlled hand when I did it and made sure I hit certain things, but it's really messy. It is bright and fun, and I am not sure which one of these two cards I like better. I would lean toward like the traditional watercolored card because it's pretty and clean, and I know that it's got a lot more. It doesn't have a lot more work in it. I want to say it has a lot more work in it, but it doesn't. But it has like the shading, and it's just kind of proper. And then this other card, I love because it is bright and bold, and it looks so free. But because I did it this way, I had control over where the colors went, and so that makes me like it. I'm just not sure. You tell me at the end when you see the photos which of these two watercolor cards you liked. Did you like them at all? Are you a fan of watercolor? You noticed that I did colored pencils and Copic markers, and I have my watercolors out here. I really wanted to use lots of different things because every card maker is different. Everybody has their own style, their own technique that they go to. And these kits are really cool for this because you can really experiment and try new things, and you're not really out that much. I mean, this little stamp set that you get with this, you get one piece of watercolor cardstock, and you get the stamp set. These Peerless colors I've had forever and ever, years and years. And I don't really use them very much, but that's the extent of what I've cut from the Peerless pad right there. I have so much more. Like the supplies we use for card making, they can be kind of pricey, but they can stretch and last for years. So off screen, I dried this or let it dry. I don't remember. But then I went back through with some more color because it just wasn't bold enough for me. Now, I use this Spellbinders mat under my work surface a lot. And I used it kind of like a palette because you can just wipe it up. You don't need anything special. I pulled out my Peerless colors, and I wanted more of this sapphire blue color. I just thought I needed that bolder color to compete with the purple and the red that I used. And the green was really strong in here. It just kind of was taking over. I needed to make sure I got the shape of the bell and all the shading that I normally would get. This reminds me of like this project we did in 7th grade art. We had to color or draw and color a what is that called? Where you line up all the pieces and you have to color them. You know, it was like a still art, something like that. You know what I mean? Where you have to, everything's all up there on the, oh no, now what am I talking about? On the podium, and then you had the still life. That's what it's called, a still life. We had this project where we had to do this still life, and we couldn't use the colors that the things were. We had to use bright colors. I remember like using oranges and blues, and there was part of it was a Coca-Cola bottle, like the old green ones. And I remember that was like purple when I colored it, and the picture itself turned out really cool. I still have it in my portfolio from like way back. We're not going to talk about how many years ago that was, but this watercolor here reminds me of that so much. But those are what they looked like. And then I thought they needed a little more. So I pulled out my Peerless liquid and I splattered them with gold. That's all I did. I splattered them with gold, dried them off, and I was kind of in love. Like I said, I'm not sure which one I really, really like more. The one with the traditional watercolor looks more like a Christmas card. The other one looks more like an art piece to me. You tell me. I'm really curious which one you like more on that. And then I trimmed these off. I wanted to split this part of the video down a little bit more, but for some reason my program would not let me. So you get to see me cutting all this, which is something I normally cut out. And then I chose to matte this. I must have had wet paint and it was getting on the card because I kept wiping that off. But I chose to matte this on black first and then on some craft card stock. And I really thought it looked like an art piece. And then this other one, I definitely wanted to play up on that gold. So I adhered it to some more of that Doris gold paper there. And it's self-sticky, so I was peeling off the back and then trimming it up. Here, added this one to a card base. And then this is the LDRS, Little Darling Rubber Stamp Company's Christmas Post Stamp. And this is from the A Vintage Christmas set. When I got this stamp out of the box, I was so excited. It was just perfect and beautiful and adorable and and I had this idea and I figured why not? So I'm gonna paper piece this. You can see by I pulled out that piece. Here is I embossed the skirt part onto a piece of vellum with iridescent embossing powder. Recently I seen my friend over at Rise and Procrastinate use that, and I was like, hey, I have some of that in my drawer. So I had to get that out. So if you're watching, that was all you, girl, all you. And so I colored my little girl here with some Copic markers, her face, and then I was trying to decide what part of the skirt I needed to color. I end up coloring the whole thing, but first I color this under layer, and I used this like peachy pink color because it went well with the paper. The paper I was using is red, but it's not like bright red. It's very vintage red. So I pieced out the pieces for her jacket, and then I definitely needed to do the top, the hood. So I stamped and pieced that out as well, so that I had all the things I needed. And then I trimmed out the skirt. I adore how this card came out. I think that I think this is my favorite card. Don't tell anybody. So at this point I realize I have to color the skirt because I'm putting this vellum layer over and I need something underneath. So I colored it with these pinky red colors here. They're beautiful. They're very vintage looking pink to me. So I did that. I also colored her mittens in the same tones. And I kept checking to see if that was going to work. And it did. And then I used my BG 72 and 70 for the white parts of her, like her dress and the fluff on her coat. And well, I thought it was just a really pretty white combination for this like cold white that you get in the wintertime. I think there's different whites, you know, there's warm white and then there's cold white. And I think, you know, especially with Copics, with any coloring medium, you can really decide what kind of white you want. And I wanted this to be a cold white because it's supposed to be wintertime in her little scene here. So I did all of my coloring. Now that I have all my pieces stamped and cut out, and I decided to do brown hair. And this was based on my postal carrier. I love her. She's awesome. And I will be making her a card with this stamp set this year. And I hope she really likes it. Oh, then I realized that the shoes were like They were like the leather shoes that had like the fold over flap, so they needed like a darker color on the bottom and then needed to be like white or cream up top. And then I put in the coloring for the trees here. Just used a couple of different browns and colored up the trees. The scene looks kind of overwhelming when you stamp it out. Like there is a lot going on, but it's not really that hard to color any image, honestly, if you just break it down into small pieces. Like systematically color certain things. I colored her skirt first because I was most excited for that. So I colored, well, I think I colored her face first, but the main thing that I colored was her skirt because I was most excited about this skirt idea that I had. And I wanted to see if I was going to be able to execute it before I got too far into this. So that's why I started there. And then I picked out these browns. And I wanted them to be similar to her hair, but I wanted them to not be identical. And then I used the same cold white combination of the BG72 and BG70 for the snow. So I tied that back to the fringe on, or the framing on all of her coat, because you want to keep colors kind of similar when you're coloring. Then I added all the green. I did that all, and then I see, this is where it's easy to, spot when you miss something, because I did all the green and I was like, oh, there's a leaf. Then I finished cutting out the last piece that I needed to paper piece. When I am paper piecing something like this, a lot of times I'll turn a sticky note over and use the sticky part just to hold my pieces. This time I used a piece of removable Scotch tape and just stuck everything to it so I didn't lose them on my work surface here. And now I'm just systematically going through coloring all of the sky. I wanted the sky to be blue. When I seen this image, I wanted her to be in a pink dress and I wanted the sky to be blue, daytime blue. I didn't want this to be nighttime. I wanted it to be this beautiful, rich blue. So I used blue. Sometimes when you look at a stamp, or when I look at a stamp, I see what I want it to be. And a lot of times I really try to do that. Sometimes it changes along the way, and I don't exactly end up with what I seen in my mind when I look at something, but I always try. It's a really good way to stay creative for me, is to just like let my imagination run wild. As crafters and card makers, we can do so much. Like there's so many things on the market. There's so many ways to do things. You can go old school and do all the super old school things. There's a lot of things that you can do. I mean, be empowered. It is only paper. So I dotted all the little berries red because, we needed a pop of bright red. And then I colored the mailbox. I still hadn't decided if I wanted the birds to be red or blue. I think on the package they might be blue, but I really wanted like cardinals. I just thought that they would look just stunning in this scene to have bright red cardinals. And oh, I colored the package too because package got to be cute. And then I colored, she has another package in her hand, and I colored that green. I wanted to bring in more green, and I put the red bow on it. And then I did that more vintagey color green because I used a green for the leaves and I didn't want them to be identical, but there is the same greens there. I just brought in the G20. And then the bright red birds, they just pop off of this image so well. So for the vellum here, I did run a bead of glue just along the edge, and then I wiped it off so it was just a little bit, and then I placed that down. And then I pieced her hat on, and then her coat. Now the fluff part of her coat is underneath the vellum, but the red pattern holds the vellum in place so it all comes out from underneath. I think it looks beautiful. So I layered this on some pattern papers, and I used that same Good Tidings sentiment stamp because that stamp set is just one giant stamp. It's worth it. If you're going to buy that stamp, buy it. I mean, it's beautiful. It would be so fun to just sit there and color. I had fun coloring it. So I pieced together my papers, and then I layered my image on a piece of black. Just thought it needed that to pop off all of these patterns. And I did edge this strip here with some Love from Lizzie peel-offs in black. I could have just layered it on a strip of black cardstock, the whole panel, and it would have done the same thing. But them Love from Lizzie peel-offs, they come in handy quite a bit. I like them. Added a little bit of shimmer to the snow and the fluff on her coat and stuff, and on all the little snowflakes that are dotted in the sky. And that skirt sticks up. It's not down. Like, it's only adhered at the waist. So it's really cool. And then I dotted glossy accents on all of the berries. So I got this red distress crayon in this kit. And a few months ago, I got a yellow one. It's just been sitting on my desk because I had no idea what to do. And I decided I was going to watercolor with it. And my little brush was dry. So I filled it up with my distress sprayer. You know, that nozzle fits right in those brushes, which is super cool. So this was the first time I had ever used the distress crayons. And I first kind of spread everything around, and then I sprayed it off really good and let it kind of run down the panel. I wanted the yellow on there, but I wanted it to be more red. I don't know, I just thought that would be kind of cool. I die cut this Noel die from the watercolor panel and adhered some sticky tape to it, some sequin tape. And then I pieced this, the positive piece of the Noel die in, and I had used some Tonic Studios Gold cardstock here. I tried cutting it out of a piece of that Darice glitter paper, but it was just kind of too fine, so it didn't die cut well. Now, I don't make shakers ever because I don't really like thick cards. Remember when we talked about my style of card making, how it is uncluttered? It is also not thick. So most of the time when people make shaker cards, they make them like 2 layers thick. And I don't know, I don't like that. So what I did here is I added just a few sequins and some like snowflake pieces. And then I took another piece of the acetate and I put that over the top or the back. And then I have like a free shaker that I can put down on a panel without worrying about it lining it up. And I think the 2 pieces of acetate, the stuff shakes around in there better. There's no like, I don't know, it just sticks around in there better, I think, or rolls around in there better. And when I die cut the Noel die, I die cut these snowflakes, and they are from a Scrapping for Less kit, I want to say like a year ago. They're spellbinders, and it sits on my desk during winter. I just really like it. That's some really old like gold ribbon I have from my grandma, so she helped make this card. And then I put this glitter paper, Simon Says Stamp glitter cardstock down on my panel, and I backed my panel with that. I just thought it looked really pretty coming through. And then I added just a few more finishing touches with some sequins around the snowflakes here. And I thought that was really pretty. So those are my cards. Thank you for sticking around for 12 cards from this kit. You won't be disappointed if you get this kit. You won't. This is probably my favorite kit I've ever received from Scrapping for Less, and I have been getting their kits for, I want to say, just over a year. I found that the stamps and papers were beautiful and versatile, and I could have done so many things with them. I really hope that you enjoyed that I kind of flipped through techniques and ideas and styles when I made this video. I really love every one of those cards. They just turned out really beautiful. And some of them are really simple. Some of them are really intricate. The watercolor cards, though, I would really, really like to know. Did you have a favorite between those two, the messy and the clean watercolor? I can't pick. I just can't do it. But I think my favorite card out of all of them is the little girl getting the mail. She just turned out so beautiful and almost exactly like I seen in my head when I pulled that stamp out of the box. So thank you so much for stopping by. There'll be a link below to the Scrapping for Less store. And as always, give cards generously. Bye.